Some women carry an ancient current within them. It runs quietly beneath the surface of their lives, shaping everything they touch, their choices, their presence, even the silence that follows their words. They are the ones who seem both here and somewhere else. Their eyes hold stories that no single lifetime could explain, and if you've ever met one, you felt it. That strange familiarity, like recognizing a song you've never heard before. Carl Jung once said that the soul is older than time, that within each of us lives something inherited from the collective unconscious, the vast ocean of human experience flowing beneath our individual lives. But some souls seem to remember more than others. They awaken early, restless, sensing that life must mean more than survival or success. They look around at the pace of the modern world and feel displaced, as if everyone is running towards something they can't see. Meanwhile, these women stand still, listening to something deeper. They don't fit the rhythm of the times because their heartbeat belongs to another age. It's not superiority, it's sensitivity, an attunement to layers most people never notice. They feel the pulse of the invisible, the emotional undercurrents in every room, the collective moods of humanity, the quiet messages hidden behind coincidence. And yet, for most of their lives, they have no name for this. No language to explain why they see and feel differently. So they begin to question themselves instead. Am I too intense, too fragile, too much? But what if this depth is not a flaw? What if it's memory, the echo of a consciousness that has walked this path before? The signs of such a soul do not appear overnight. They surface slowly like forgotten ruins rising through the mist of modern life. Each one reveals a truth you've always known, but never dared to claim. Because being an old soul in a young world is not easy. It asks you to live awake among the sleeping, to carry wisdom that others may not yet be ready to hear. But when you finally recognize what you are, the loneliness begins to turn into purpose. Today, we'll uncover the 12 signs that mark the women who carry this ancient light, not as a title to wear, but as a truth to live. And if these words find you, it's not by chance. Something within you has been waiting to remember. There's a kind of hunger that no meal can satisfy, no achievement, no applause. It lives deeper than the body, gnawing softly at the edge of consciousness, a question that refuses to fade. For the woman with an old soul, that question is simple. What does this all mean? She asks it in quiet moments when the world grows still, after the party ends, when the noise fades, and she can hear herself again. It isn't a philosophical hobby or a late-night curiosity. It's a vital need, as essential as breath or water. Others chase goals, collect titles, build lives measured in numbers. But she wakes each morning with a sense that something vast and invisible is missing. No possession, no partner, no milestone fills the gap. Because the emptiness isn't a void, it's a doorway. This hunger drives her away from the predictable paths. While others walk where maps already exist, she steps into terrain that can't be charted by logic alone. She seeks meaning in patterns, not in products, in truth, not in trends. She finds herself drawn to the inner sciences, philosophy, mysticism, Jung's psychology of the soul. She doesn't read Jung for theory. She reads him because he describes the very terrain she's been wandering without knowing its name. His words feel less like discovery and more like recognition. He names what she has always felt, the lifelong process of individuation, of stripping away the false and returning to what is real. This is why the hunger never leaves her, because it's not meant to. It's the compass of her evolution, the invisible thread pulling her toward what she came here to remember. And yet, this hunger often isolates her. In a world built for comfort and distraction, meaning can feel like rebellion. People tell her to relax, to stop overthinking, to enjoy life. But she knows the difference between living and merely existing. Something inside her refuses to settle for half-truths. And that refusal, that quiet defiance, is the first sign of the old soul. Because it's the moment she realizes that her longing is not a weakness, it's the soul itself calling her home. Have you ever stepped into a place you've never been and felt your chest loosen, as if a long-held breath finally exhaled? For the woman with an old soul, this happens more than once. A coastline she's only seen in photographs, a narrow street in a foreign city at dusk, an old melody rising from a language she doesn't speak. Something in her recognizes it all the way a key recognizes its lock. This is not nostalgia. Nostalgia misses what it remembers. This sensation remembers what it has never met. It arrives as a knowing beneath thought, clean, wordless, tender. Not proof, but presence. She walks among ruins and feels a warmth in the bones. A quiet whisper. You've stood here before. She watches a Japanese tea ceremony and tears appear without story. She hears a Celtic lament and some inner door swings open to the wind. Indigenous prayers, desert silence, monastery bells at dawn, each is a thread, and together they weave a map she didn't know she was following. Jung might call this the psyche touching archetypal memory. Not personal biography, but the deep sediment of the human soul. Patterns the species has lived for centuries press softly against her consciousness, and in that pressure she feels no distance. The past is not behind her. It is within her, moving like groundwater. Others will ask for explanations. She has none, and she doesn't force one. Meaning does not always need a reason. Sometimes it needs reverence. So she listens. She lets the resonance do its quiet work, because every recognition is also instruction. Remember what you are connected to. Walk as if you belong here, because you do. This homesickness is not an ache that diminishes life. It beautifies it. It teaches her to greet places as elders and rituals as doorways. She learns to travel without conquest, to receive without taking, to bow internally to the invisible hosts who keep each landscape alive. Yet there is a cost. The more she remembers, the less she fits the culture of forgetting. The tempo of modern life feels abrasive against such tenderness. Tourism insists on speed. The soul asks for pace. Where most people collect photos, she collects silences, and those silences change her. Because with every recognition comes responsibility. If the land feels like kin, you cannot treat it like property. If a tradition wakes your tears, you cannot reduce it to decoration. The old soul begins to live as a guest, careful, grateful, awake. She knows the ground beneath her feet is not an object. It is a relative. And still, beneath all this, the longing remains. Not to escape this life, but to deepen into it. To live so attuned to the invisible that the visible glows with meaning. She doesn't want a different world. She wants this world fully met. This is why she holds her recognition gently. She refuses to argue it into existence. She lets it prove itself in how she walks, slower, kinder, listening for what the place is asking of her. Soon, this sensitivity to place becomes sensitivity to people. The same intuition that reads a landscape begins to read a heartbeat. And with that recognition comes the next sign, a compassion that flows like a spring and a center that does not break. She will feel the world more deeply than most. The question is, will it drown her, or will it teach her how to breathe? The woman with an old soul feels everything. Pain does not pass through her. It stays long enough to be understood. She absorbs what others deflect. A stranger's grief, a child's confusion, the silent despair behind polite smiles. Her compassion is not something she practices. It is what she is. It rises uninvited, as natural as light pouring through an open window. When someone suffers, she doesn't stand apart. She bends inward, as if part of her remembers the same wound. Jung said that empathy is not sentiment, it is recognition. A resonance of shared humanity vibrating across the invisible bridge between souls. She knows this without needing to define it. Where others see distance, she feels continuity. And while that unity is beautiful, it can also be unbearable. Because to feel everything means to carry more than most can hold. She cannot easily look away from suffering or distract herself with noise. The collective pain of the world hums in the background of her days, and sometimes it becomes deafening. There are nights she wishes she could turn it off, but she can't, because this sensitivity is not her flaw, it's her function. She was made porous so that light could move through her in both directions, receiving, transforming, giving back. And yet, within this deep feeling lives something paradoxical, an unshakable calm. The world storms, but her center does not collapse. It's not detachment, it's remembrance. She has learned that everything rises and falls, breaks and rebuilds. that no storm is final and no darkness absolute. She has lived enough lifetimes, perhaps, to recognize the pattern. That chaos always precedes clarity. She doesn't need to control the outcome. She trusts the process that others fear. While others grasp for control, she becomes the quiet point people orbit around. In her presence, panic softens, anger melts, grief breathes, not because she speaks the right words, but because her energy says, "You are safe here." Jung called this the transcendent function, the capacity to hold tension between opposites without collapsing into either. She lives that truth. She can hold joy and sorrow in the same breath, hope and realism in the same gaze. Her steadiness doesn't mean she feels less. It means she knows more. People sense it instinctively. In crisis, they call her. They don't know why, only that something in her presence feels like home. She becomes the lighthouse for those lost at sea, even as she herself navigates invisible waters. But there's a price to being the calm in everyone else's storm. It often means she weathers her own in silence. Her strength becomes the reason others forget she too bleeds. And sometimes, after holding so many others, she retreats to remember what it feels like to be held. That retreat, into silence, into solitude, is not an escape. It's the next sign of her evolution. Because solitude is not her punishment, it's her nourishment. And without it, the soft heart hardens and the still center begins to shake. She often sees what others will not see for years. Trends, shifts, undercurrents. She feels them forming before they have a name. It's not prediction, it's perception. An intuitive reading of patterns rising through the collective unconscious. While others are distracted by surface noise, she senses the tremor beneath, the quiet movement before the earthquake. Ideas, values, and destinies reveal themselves early to her kind. She speaks of things too soon, and the world, unready, calls her dramatic, strange, or naive. Carl Jung wrote that great changes first appear as whispers in the psyche of the few. They ripple outward through art, dreams, and intuition long before society notices. She is one of those first ripples. But being early has a cost. Forerunners walk ahead of the collective, which means they walk alone. No applause waits for them in the wilderness of the unseen. Their insights are often met with silence, or worse, ridicule. And yet, years later, when the world finally arrives where she once stood, no one remembers who pointed the way. At first, this loneliness feels unbearable. She tries to explain what she sees, but language is clumsy and comprehension even rarer. So she learns to speak less, to guard her visions like sacred fire. Those who are meant to understand will find their own way to its warmth. The old soul learns patience. She stops trying to convince. Instead, she lives as a quiet example of what is coming. Her actions become prophecy. Her life becomes evidence. Still, the distance aches. It's a strange grief, to be surrounded by people and unseen by them, to speak truth and hear it dismissed because it hasn't yet become visible. Sometimes she questions her own clarity. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm the strange one, but time always proves her knowing true, and in that confirmation, she stops apologizing for her vision. She realizes that being misunderstood is not failure, it's timing. Not everyone is supposed to meet her where she stands, so she learns to cherish solitude as a companion, not a punishment. The isolation that once felt like exile becomes her temple, because in silence, she can hear the next whisper rising from the depths of humanity. She becomes a bridge between the unseen and the seen, a translator for the soul of the age. This is why her loneliness is holy. It is not absence, it is preparation. The universe hides her not to punish her, but to refine her vision so that, when the time comes, her words will not be mere opinions. They will be truth made flesh. And to hold that truth, she must master solitude. Because only in stillness can the next revelation be heard. Only in silence can the next chapter begin, the sanctuary where her soul comes home to itself. Solitude is not her escape from the world, it is how she returns to herself. For the woman with an old soul, silence is medicine. When life grows loud and crowded with demands, she withdraws, not from people, but from noise, because only in quiet can she hear the language of her own being. Others might mistake her retreat for sadness or rejection. They imagine loneliness where she feels reverence. but she knows the difference between being alone and being with herself. Loneliness starves the spirit. Solitude feeds it. She has learned that the world's pace is not her pace. Where others thrive on speed, she requires stillness. Where others seek distraction, she seeks depth. Her nature moves slowly, deliberately, like a tide that refuses to rush just because the shore is impatient. In solitude, she remembers who she is beneath the noise. The false layers fall away, titles, roles, expectations. What remains is essence, quiet, steady, alive. Here she reconnects with the pulse of something eternal, the same current that carried her through lifetimes. She reads, reflects, creates. She listens, not to opinions, but to the soft directives of her intuition. And slowly, clarity begins to rise like dawn over her internal landscape. Ideas that once felt tangled start to breathe again. Pain she couldn't name begins to soften into understanding. This is the hidden purpose of her solitude: integration. It is where experience becomes wisdom, where chaos is digested into meaning. Without it, she would lose herself in the noise of the collective. With it, she becomes whole again. Of course, the world rarely honors this rhythm. It rewards visibility, not reflection. To step back is often seen as failure. But she has stopped explaining herself. She knows that her absence is not emptiness, it is incubation. And when she re-emerges, her presence carries the stillness she found there. People feel it, even if they can't name it. She becomes calmer, clearer, deeper. A mirror reminding others of what peace looks like. Jung wrote that the soul grows in the dark, in silence, in uncertainty. That the unconscious needs quiet to speak. She knows this by experience. In her solitude, she communes with what Jung called the self, that vast center of consciousness beyond personality or story. And when she steps back into the world, she carries that center within her. It becomes her inner sanctuary, portable and unshakable. No matter where she goes, she can return to it in a breath. This is why she no longer fears being alone. Because solitude has taught her the truth. She was never truly alone at all. The soul that dwells within her has always been her companion. From this inner stillness, a new kind of wealth begins to emerge. One that has nothing to do with possessions and everything to do with peace. The woman with an old soul does not chase abundance. She embodies it. To her, wealth has never been measured in ownership. Objects feel heavy. They anchor her to illusions that fade with time. She has learned through experience, not theory, that the things we accumulate often end up owning us. She is not ascetic. She does not reject beauty. She loves a well-made cup, a warm room, the softness of a morning robe. But she no longer confuses comfort with meaning. She has released the belief that happiness can be purchased or that success can replace serenity. Jung said the mature soul sees through symbols, and material wealth, once a symbol of safety, becomes transparent to her. She looks beyond form to essence. A sunset moves her more than a diamond. A deep conversation feels richer than any luxury, because only what feeds the soul lasts. When she lets go of excess, she discovers space. And in that space, joy grows wild again. Gratitude becomes her currency. Simplicity becomes her wealth. She no longer wants more. She wants enough. This detachment does not make her cold. It makes her free. And in that freedom, she rediscovers wonder. The ability to be moved by small things, to notice the sacred woven into the ordinary. This shift changes how she relates to others too, especially to those who stand closest to life's thresholds, the very young and the very old. Children and elders recognize her instantly. They sense in her the same familiarity she feels with them. For both live closer to the veil that separates the seen and the unseen. Children have just arrived from the mystery. Elders are preparing to return to it. She stands between, bridging both worlds. Children trust her because she sees them, not as projects to mold, but as complete souls in small bodies. She listens to their questions without dismissing their magic. She answers with respect, not superiority. And they respond by revealing truths adults have forgotten how to hear. Elders too feel at ease with her. They recognize the patience in her gaze, the absence of fear in her silence. She meets them without awkward pity or denial of mortality. To her, aging is not tragedy, but initiation. She honors their stories, their slowness, their fading strength, because she knows what they are moving toward, the same mystery that has always called her name. Through these encounters, she learns something essential. Real value is not found in accumulation, but in connection. To sit with a child's laughter or an elder's memory is to touch the continuum of existence itself. She begins to live lighter. Her home, her words, her calendar, each becomes simpler, quieter, more intentional. Every possession she keeps must serve beauty or truth. Everything else becomes noise. And in that quiet space, another hunger begins to stir. Not for things, not for people, but for the invisible light that shines behind all form. It is the pull of the spiritual dimension awakening fully within her, a yearning not to escape the world, but to see the divine pulsing inside it. For the woman with an old soul, spirituality is not escape, it is recognition. She doesn't turn to the divine because life hurts. She turns to it because she can see it, quietly breathing beneath all things. To her, the invisible is more real than the visible. She feels energy where others see emptiness, intention where others see coincidence, pattern where others see chaos. Her faith is not inherited, it's remembered. It rises naturally from her being. Like a plant bending toward light it cannot name, but cannot deny. She studies many paths but belongs to none completely. Religions are languages to her, different tongues attempting to describe the same unspeakable truth. She reads the mystics of Christianity and hears the same heartbeat as in the chants of Buddhism or the wisdom of indigenous traditions. The names change, the essence does not. All point toward one awareness, that we are not separate from what we seek. For her, every act becomes spiritual practice. Cooking, cleaning, listening, loving, each one can be a ritual if done with presence. She finds the divine not in temples, but in moments, in the sunlight between leaves, in a stranger's kindness, in the silence before sleep. And because she lives this way, her eyes begin to change. They no longer look at life, and they look into it. People notice it but can't explain it. There is something ancient in her gaze, not sadness, not even wisdom, but remembrance. Her eyes tell stories of storms endured and illusions surrendered. They hold both gentleness and gravity, the paradox that only comes from meeting the shadow and surviving the encounter. Jung said that the eyes reflect the self, the deeper center of consciousness that knows both the darkness and the light. She has faced her own shadow and found power, not shame. She has seen her capacity for cruelty and met it with compassion. That integration softens her. It makes her kind without naivety. When people meet her eyes, they feel seen, not judged, not analyzed, but recognized. She sees through masks because she has stopped wearing her own. She no longer hides behind personas. What you see in her is what she has made peace with in herself. Sometimes that depth unsettles others. To be seen fully can feel like exposure. But those who are ready find it healing, because in her gaze they encounter truth wrapped in acceptance. And when two old souls meet, no words are needed. A moment of silence passes between them, a subtle nod of recognition. Ah, you too. It's brief, but it changes everything. For a lifetime of isolation dissolves, and what remains is kinship, a sense that the same light travels through different bodies, different eyes, one soul. But such sight carries weight. To see so deeply means you can no longer unsee. And to live with that kind of vision requires guidance from within, a compass that doesn't depend on proof, but on truth. That compass is her intuition, and it's the next revelation of her ancient soul. Her intuition speaks in a voice softer than thought. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It moves like water, subtle, certain, impossible to grasp, but impossible to stop. The woman with an old soul doesn't need proof to know. She simply knows. And the longer she lives, the more she learns that this quiet knowing is the only compass that never fails her. It isn't magic, it's attunement, a sensitivity to what Jung called the collective unconscious, that ocean of symbols, instincts, and memories connecting every human life. Where logic sees fragments, intuition feels the pattern. Sometimes it warns her before danger comes. Other times it draws her toward what will change her most. She has learned to trust it, even when it defies reason, because every time she ignored it to please others or to appear rational, she paid the price. Every regret she carries is an echo of intuition unheeded. Now, when that inner current moves, she follows. Not out of superstition, but reverence. She has come to understand that intuition is how the soul speaks, and the soul is never wrong, only ignored. Still, living this way isolates her. The modern world worships evidence. It believes in data, not depth, in explanation, not experience. So when she moves by intuition, she's called impulsive, irrational, naive, but she no longer tries to defend what can only be lived. This same inner vision that guides her also reveals others. Her sight pierces facades effortlessly. She can sense the motives behind words, the wounds behind anger, the insecurity hidden beneath arrogance. It isn't judgment, it's perception. Having faced her own shadow, she recognizes it in others. She can no longer be fooled by charm or eloquence. What others find dazzling, she often finds hollow. What others dismiss as awkward, she sees as honest. This clarity is both gift and burden. She moves through crowds and feels the collective pretending, the small lies that hold social life together. She smiles, but she knows, and that knowing creates distance. She can't unsee the pain people hide beneath their laughter, the exhaustion beneath their ambition, the loneliness behind their curated happiness. So while she can love many, she can truly connect with few. This is the paradox of the old soul. Her vision makes her compassionate, but it also makes her solitary. Because most people do not want to be seen, they want to be adored, and she can't offer that illusion anymore, so she stands slightly apart, gentle but discerning. She listens more than she speaks, and those who meet her at depth discover something rare. A person who sees them completely and loves them anyway. Jung said the greatest act of courage is to see oneself clearly. She has done that, and because of it, she has learned how to see others without fear. This is the unmasking, not the stripping away of pretense in others, but the quiet refusal to wear her own. She no longer needs to be impressive, understood, or liked. She only needs to be true, and that truth is her liberation. It frees her to live with the serenity of someone who knows who she is and no longer needs the world to confirm it. Yet this clarity leads to a deeper responsibility, a sacred task that every awakened soul must eventually accept: to live what she knows, to embody her wisdom, to carry it into a world that still forgets. That is the vow, and it is where her journey now returns to its beginning. There are women who walk through life carrying something ancient within them. You've known this from the start, but now you understand what that ancientness truly is. It is not mystery for its own sake. It is responsibility, the sacred duty of remembering what the world forgets. Recognition changes everything. Once the old soul awakens, she cannot return to sleep. She cannot unknow the patterns she has seen or pretend that her sensitivity is a flaw to hide. The very things that once made her feel broken reveal themselves as the architecture of her purpose. She no longer asks, "Why am I like this?" She asks, "What am I meant to do with it?" Jung said that individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, is not self-improvement. It is self-revelation. It is the uncovering of what has always been true beneath the masks of adaptation. For the old soul, that revelation demands action. Wisdom unexpressed turns to weight. Seeing is not enough. She must live what she sees, and that is her vow: to walk gently, to speak truthfully, to hold light even when the world prefers shadows, to embody the understanding that consciousness itself is sacred, that every life, every encounter, every wound is an initiation into deeper love. She knows she will not always be understood, but she no longer seeks permission to exist as she is. She knows her worth doesn't depend on being seen, and her peace doesn't depend on being agreed with. She walks with quiet dignity, carrying her insight like a lantern in fog, not to prove she is different, but to remind others that they too are ancient. They too belong to something eternal. And this is where the story closes the circle. The same current that once moved through her now moves through you. You felt its pull in every line, that subtle recognition, that whisper saying, "This is me." If these words found you, it's because the same timeless intelligence that guides her is stirring in you as well. You are not reading about her. You are remembering yourself. So take this knowing and let it shape how you move through the world. Walk slower. Listen deeper. Speak only when truth has ripened on your tongue. Love as if every soul you meet carries eternity within it, because it does. This is the vow of the old soul, to live awake among the sleeping, to see through illusion and still choose tenderness, to stand between worlds, not above, but within, and to serve the quiet evolution of consciousness itself. And when the world grows loud again, return to the beginning. Return to the silence inside you, the underground spring that has been flowing long before this lifetime began. It is still there. It always will be. If these words awaken something ancient in you, subscribe and stay close. Together, we will keep remembering the unseen, the forgotten, the eternal,